Default text: today we're leaving Strand and heading a bit south of Marstrand. The forecast calls for quite a bit of wind, around 20 to 30 knots from the southwest. We find a tall island that offers good protection. It's our first time here, and since we arrive early, there aren't many boats around yet. After some searching, we find a nice spot. However, it's quite shallow on both sides of the boat. We're very glad we entered slowly and kept a proper lookout. The photos you see here are from the island we moored at, called Vaxholmen. The weather isn't great as we leave our island near Strand, so today we choose to steer from inside. Fortunately, the weather improves by the time we reach our next harbor. It can be very difficult to go ashore when the terrain is wet. Mollis is a charming coastal village located on the western side of Forest Island in St. Vaxholm Archipelago. It's a popular stop for recreational boaters, offering both guest harbor facilities and possibilities for anchoring nearby. The guest harbor in Mollis is well equipped with mooring spaces, electricity, water, and fuel. It is best approached from the south or southwest, with well-marked channels and sufficient depth for most leisure boats. The harbor can get crowded in high season, so arriving early in the day is recommended. Mollis is one of the oldest fishing villages in Vaxholm, with a rich maritime history. Onshore, you'll find a mix of traditional white wooden houses, a small harbor promenade, restaurants, cafes, and a grocery store. The village has a relaxed and authentic atmosphere, especially outside peak season. We visit Mollis later in the holiday. Carosen is a narrow, sheltered strait located between the islands of Carosen and Herne on the Swedish west coast, just north of Mollis. It's a well-known and scenic passage for boaters navigating the Vaxholmen archipelago and offers both natural beauty and practical mooring opportunities. Carosen is suitable for smaller and medium-sized vessels due to its narrow width and tight turns. Navigation through the strait requires attention, especially in high season when boat traffic increases. The fairway is well marked, but proceed at low speed and with care. This anchorage looked promising on the chart, but the island was too low to provide shelter in strong wind. So we chose the next option, which turned out to be much better. We had never visited either of these places before. Vaxholmen is a small island located just south of Marstrand on the Swedish west coast. It's a scenic and relatively quiet anchorage spot, ideal for boaters looking for shelter and a peaceful experience close to nature. The island offers good protection from southwesterly winds, especially on the eastern side, where the shoreline is steep and suitable for longside mooring or stern to anchoring with lines ashore. Depths vary, so approach with caution. There are shallow areas on both sides of some coves, and a slow approach with a lookout is recommended. There are several mooring bolts in the rocks, which makes securing lines easy without needing to climb far inland. The seabed is mostly rock and seaweed, so anchoring may be less reliable than tying directly to shore. It's very shallow on starboard. Since we haven't been here before, we carefully check the conditions before heading back in and dropping anchor. There are many shallow areas here, and the water is less clear than further north. We consider other spots before deciding to settle where we first started. And as usual, there's always someone on shore who comes over to help. We do the same. It's a great way to get to know others who are sharing the same anchorage. On land, Vaxholmen is undeveloped and natural, with smooth granite rocks typical of the Vaxholm coast. It's a great spot for a swim, a walk, or simply enjoying the view of passing boats and the open sea. The island is small, so you can easily explore it in under an hour. Vaxholmen is not a common tourist destination, making it a peaceful stopover if you're cruising the coast south of Marstrand and looking for a beautiful, natural anchorage off the beaten path.